Is there such thing as being Black British, and is it a new thing? Hello. Welcome to my channel. I'm dami.zain. If you're new here, I hope you stay. I hope you click that like button if you enjoy the conversation, and I hope you subscribe. If you have been here before, thank you for coming back. I'm so sorry I wasn't able to do a video last week. I actually received some really unsettling news and I just didn't have the mental capacity to come on here and share my opinions about things, if I'm going to be very honest. But I'm back now. I have been procrastinating in terms of talking about this topic because I've already done a couple of videos talking about Black Britishness in the dating realm, and a comment that keeps coming up is that there's no such thing as being Black British. It's not real. So I thought, you know what, it makes sense that I talk about that because it's been a topic on TikTok and it's been a topic in the comments of some of my previous videos. So yeah, I want to address it. Before I get into it, expect me to share my opinions. That's the whole point of my YouTube channel. If you don't like my opinion, that's okay. If you have a different opinion, you can share it in the comments, but keep it respectful. With all of that out of the way, let's get into it.
Black Britishness starts at grime and ends at Three Wings and Chips in a Morley's box with a strawberry Miranda. Ever since that combo landed on Earth, the Black British identity has never known anything more or less. I don't come and talk about our 90s this, 90s that. That wasn't us. We got to this country 30 minutes ago. We didn't have time to wear baggy jeans. Okay? That wasn't us. Don't get us confused with the M words in Chicago, okay? That wasn't us. And that's okay. That's okay.
I'm going to come out and say it. I don't agree. If you studied history and sociology, you would know that Black Britishness didn't start 5 minutes ago. It is not something that happened in the 2000s. There are books that talk about Black Britishness. For example, There Ain't No Black in the Union Jack, written by Paul Gilroy in 1987. In this book, Gilroy explores the intersection between race, culture, and nationalism in Britain. The book was actually a critique of the persistence of racial inequality and how racism is embedded in British culture and identity. Gilroy used historical, sociological, and cultural analysis to argue that British national identity is constructed in such a way that excludes Black and minority communities, even though Blackness played an integral part in rebuilding Britain after the war. Another good book that talks about the intersection between being Black and British is Black and British: A Forgotten History by David Olusoga, written in 2016. This is an exploration of long and often overlooked history of Black people in Britain, and the book challenged the misconception that Black presence in Britain is a recent phenomenon and how there has been Blackness in Britain and in British culture for over 2,000 years. And then another good book that you could read on this topic would be AfroPean Notes from Black Europe by Johny written in 2019. In this book, Pitts documents his exploration, his journey across Europe, and he tries to understand what it means to be African and European at the same time. This book offers insightful discussion around the complexities of identity, belonging, and race across the continent. I think that these three books are a really good place to start if you wanted to understand not only the history of Blackness in Britain or in the UK more widely, but also the Black experience since we've been here. It gives you insight into history that are not typically taught in school. So if you are really interested in looking at this a lot more deeper than what you see on social media, then by all means, these three books would be a really good place to start. I'm just going to give you a really quick summary of the origins and evolution of that term, Black British, before I launch into my opinion of the whole thing. Post-war migration, we already know after World War II, many people from British colonies in the Caribbean, such as Jamaica, Trinidad, Barbados, and etc., and later from Africa, like Nigeria, Ghana, for example, example, moved to Britain to help rebuild the economy. And these communities began to use the term Black as a form of solidarity to highlight their shared experience of racism and exclusion in Britain, despite having a diverse cultural background. Then we move into the 1960s and 70s, which is when the civil rights and anti-racism movements happened in Britain. And at that time, Black was adopted as a political term, not only by people of African and Caribbean descent, but also by South Asians and other marginalized groups. It signified unity in the fight against racism and colonialism. And then the term Black British really started to gain academic and cultural recognition in the 1980s, where it became a term specifically used for people of African and Caribbean descent. This was because there was a lot more discussions about identity and multiculturalism, and those discussions became prominent in the British society. This is where we began to see books from people like Paul Gilroy. We had academics, we had writers and artists using that term to articulate the unique experiences of Black communities in Britain and distinguishing them, as in Black Britons, from African Americans and other Black people in the diaspora. And then the last, bolt in the term Black British came in 1991 when the UK census introduced Black or Black British as a category. This reflected growing awareness of the need to acknowledge and document Britain's racial diversity. When we look at Black Britishness, it's important to understand what the term even means. Long of the short, the term was created to identify descendants of Africans or Caribbeans that live or were born in the UK. Africans and Caribbeans in the UK are displaced from Africa and the Caribbean. And that displacement has meant that we have a different version of our culture than they do back home, wherever that would be. And that means that we have an amalgamation of not just our heritage culture, but the culture of the host country that we were born and raised in. And that amalgamation, that intersection, has created its own group, its own cultural identity. And that is what Black British means. It is that intersection, it is that duality that has been identified. The whole point of the term Black British is to give some sort of identity to those of us that weren't born in our places of origin. When you look at it from a sociological perspective, your primary socialization is the first socialization that you experience. That is home. That is mum, dad, potentially family, or whoever it was that raised you. And when you're outside of your family sphere, you're being socialized by what is outside of that. That is secondary socialization. When you move into secondary socialization, where you have absolutely no control, or your parents have absolutely no control who is around you, and because we're living in a society that has other races, other ethnicities around you, but is fundamentally under the thumb of the British system, there is no if, buts, or maybes. Your culture, as in your heritage, is there, but you're also influenced as a person by that system. For example, you cannot tell me that the socialization that you receive in school will make you the same as someone that is socialized at school back home. It will never be the same. And I think that a lot of the time, because we're trying to be so pro-Black, we often try to ignore or deny that part of ourselves. I've said in previous videos, and I always say in real life as well, that I am a Nigerian babe. But some history, some context about me. We have my dad, who was born, raised in Nigeria, moved to Britain in his early 20s. Then we have my mum, who was born in Britain, but went to school and raised in Nigeria. So she spent her formative years in Nigeria and came back to Britain in her late teens, early 20s, met my dad, they got married, then they had me. So I understand that I am Nigerian, and no matter how much I eat the food, I go to the weddings, I watch Nigerian movies, I listen to Afro beats, Afro juju, I understand the language, I can speak parts of the language. Fundamentally, I was born, raised, schooled, socialized in Britain. My version of Nigerian culture is diluted. My context includes British context. There is a duality there, which means I can never truly understand what it means to be a Nigerian from Nigeria. And just because I go there every year on holiday, or maybe 2 times a year, or even if I've spent every single summer there my whole life, I still don't understand what it means to live in Nigeria. Well, I understand it from a theoretical perspective, but in terms of a lived experience perspective, I don't. And I'm also not blind to the fact that I have certain privileges because I was born and raised in the UK. For example, free healthcare, free schooling, constant light. No tea, no shade. But there's certain things that I don't face because I wasn't raised in Nigeria. I haven't dealt with the police being brutally discriminatory to young people in Nigeria. I have not experienced having to do my WAEC, which is basically when you reach a certain age in Nigeria, you have to serve your country. And once you've served your country, then you can actually start working. We don't have that in Britain. I haven't experienced true tribalism because whilst we laugh and joke in Britain about, oh, I'm Yoruba, oh, I'm Igbo, oh, I'm Hausa, oh, I'm Edo, oh, I'm this, I'm that, we still move as Nigerians together. Back in Nigeria, they know what true tribalism is. It's so deep, it is political. So I'm Nigerian, but I'm not Nigerian enough to say that I am solely Nigerian. And I think that is the point that I feel is lost and missed when we have this Black British conversation. Whenever I see people say,
you are not Black British, why do you want to associate yourself with a term that was created by the people that colonized you?
I totally get it. In my day-to-day life, as someone that was bred in Britain, I often face microaggressions, discrimination, and racism because, first of all, my name is not a British name. I have a Nigerian name. I don't look British. I might sound it a little bit because I can speak fluent English, but fundamentally, I don't look British. So obviously it's a clear sign that I'm not a native of this land. But whenever I go back home to Nigeria, which I do regard as home, as much as I regard Britain as home, I stand out like a sore thumb. When I speak Yoruba, I don't sound like someone that speaks Yoruba because they were born and raised there. The way that I form my words in of itself, it sounds British. They can tell. The way that I dress, the way that I present, my mindset, everything about me has British connotations to it. I'm in spaces and I'm reminded that I don't fit neither here or there. I fit here in this middle space, in this intersection. My gripe with the term Black British is the fact that it creates a blanket group name for a community that is diverse within itself. Because as a West African, my culture is completely different from an East African, North African, South African, Central African. My culture is different from Ghana, Togo, Sierra Leone, Cameroon, Ivory Coast. Like, it's different. Likewise, the culture between the Caribbean countries is different. Now, with the understanding of Black history in Britain, how the term Black British came to be, and where we are today in terms of the growing population of Black British people, as much as we want to hold on to our personal and individual cultural identities, when we look at it from a broader sense, we do all fit under that Black British banner. To wrap it up, please, can we just let people identify with whatever term they want to, and not be ignorant to the fact that it is a term, it does exist, it is used not only by Black people in Britain, not only by white people in Britain, but systematically it is now a term that is recognised. If you are British by birthright, but you are also a descendant of an African or a Caribbean, and you want to call yourself Black British, you're within your rights to, because history and the way you are socialised says so. On the flip side, if you are British by birthright and you are a descendant of an African or a Caribbean country or countries, and you want to identify solely as that African and or Caribbean countries, then that's absolutely okay. Fundamentally, being Black British doesn't mean that you've turned your back on where you originate from. It means that you understand the intersection between your ethnicity, your heritage, and your nationality. But anyway, as for me, when people ask me where am I from, I'll say I'm Nigerian, but I'll tell you I'm British born. I'm a British Nigerian. I am British African. And because I am part of the Black race, I'm Black British. It is what it is, right? I could be British and Nigerian and African all at once. And you know what? My 2 passports says I can.